This is VoyMonk vlog number 59. This is gonna be for Friday. Yeah, Friday vlog. And this is gonna be the vlog that I guess I'll pretty much end this week in terms of the content that I started off saying that I wanted to do, as far as talking about who I'm not and what I don't want and who I'm not. And also about staying in the presence of mind and being in the moment, not rushing through, not getting past it before it's time. And this particular vlog, I wanted to talk a bit more about authenticity and how it relates to this channel and why that is such an important detail. In contrast, because obviously I think a lot of what I see and what I experience for the most part isn't very authentic. And the funny thing about that is that I've talked about my passions being for 80s and 90s content in terms of pop culture, which if you've grown up in the 80s and 90s, I think you definitely know that most of the content, especially television, is anything but authentic. In fact, it's the quite polar opposite. And maybe that is exactly why it is, I don't know, me personally, why I don't find a lot of interest in most of the content in media today, as opposed to like the 80s and 90s, which maybe doesn't make a lot of sense considering what I just said, as far as the 80s and 90s were anything but, I think, authentic. Most of what you've seen, just like before, and I'd say previous generations and decades as far as television, I think sometimes it was a little bit more, sometimes it was a little bit less authentic and had realism. And by saying realism, I don't want to get too far away from what I'm talking about in terms of authenticity. Realism, I don't think, is necessarily authentic, or at least the attempt to be as real as possible, I don't think is necessarily about being authentic. I think being authentic simply means, at least for me, purpose. What is the purpose behind doing whatever it is that I'm doing? And I'll be honest, there's not necessarily always a need for that. Categorizing and labeling things, I can kind of get, from a younger perspective maybe, and I don't think there's probably going to be, I don't know how many people younger might be listening to this, if ever, but I think that there is a need or a yearning, especially when younger, to define oneself and not be labeled or be judged before they've gotten a chance to even show who they are. However, for me, that's true as well. But as I believe I've gotten older, I think there's also a safety and comfort in knowing exactly what's inside the bottle. And that, sometimes labels are actually correct. And sometimes they really are part of the overall authenticity in terms of what I said, as far as being who you want to be, doing what you want to do, and, making whatever plans, however you make plans, and what becomes of those. And so for what I'm getting at in terms of the authenticity is that I don't think it has to necessarily always have to do with about as much realism as much as it has to do with purpose and where things come from. And that requires labeling. That requires having a concrete and a serious, at least good idea about what it is you're doing and where things are coming from. And some philosophies might be, well, that's just an illusion. That's not possible. I think, and I've said this earlier this week in my previous vlogs, is that, obviously you don't always get what you want. And personally, I would say in life, even at 46, there's very little next to nothing that I know as a majority, and very few things that I'm absolutely certain about. And I'm not pretending. I don't think that I'm an expert on anything. But I can say through experience, through my life, the very, very few things that I do know, and the very few things I think have been known, those are the things that I want to say, I gravitate towards mostly. And when I'm speaking about authenticity, that is the thing that's the most important to me in terms of the purpose, right? Where that knowledge is. And because you can't really always be so certain about many things, or at least I'm speaking mostly to myself. I'm speaking to my intelligence, my experiences, and not trying to project towards anyone, just giving the experiences and perspectives of my life. Doing this channel, like I said, it's about that authenticity. And while I share my passions about the things that I love, like I said, the 80s and 90s, and they're not very realistic in a lot of terms, but I think where the authenticity is about, at least in those genres or periods of time, it felt for me, because I lived it, something that was a lot more authentic in terms, at least in the storytelling and the overall purpose behind what was being said, even if it got sidetracked or misdirected or went the other way or something like that. And so fast forward to today, as far as content in the media and how the landscape is completely changed, those things have reached a point where I think, not all things for all people, but with so much content, so much out there for just anybody and everybody, if you truly were looking for something that was closer to your interest, you can find it. Now, whether that's always good or bad, I think there's consensus. I think there's talk and conversation about whether or not that's always good or bad. That's not the conversation for me to be had. I can only tell you that this channel is about life experiences, about passions, about things that it's, for me, like I said, 80s, 90s pop culture. But it can be about movies. It can be about music. It can be, it can be about art. It can be about anything that's generally not the same tone that, one can get anywhere else. And it's, as far as being critical and as far as review, this isn't supposed to be a haven from everything and anything that's negative. I mean, those things do exist. But at the same time, that's not what this is about at all. And there's nothing about any of the content for the VoyMonk channel, like coming from myself, or anything as far as a community that I want to create that's really about any of that. Any of, preaching, teaching, telling people what to do, or being about a specific cause or anything other than just, if you want to engage, you want to produce some content, I would definitely promote it. I would definitely enjoy it. I definitely love to see it. I love to be heard. I'd love to share ideas and opinions as it relates to those passions, and just generally being overall about more than just the regular talk and the regular, I guess, pop culture as it sits right now, which for me, like I said, 46 years old, I don't feel a part of. And I don't feel as though I really particularly care about being engaged with. And I think that's okay. Just as, like I said, there are going to be things about this channel and the content that I do that I think many people may not necessarily be their cup of tea for a bunch of different reasons. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with anyone who just says, nah, this is boring. I don't care. This is stupid. Or whatever your opinion may be. And that's okay. But hopefully, if you can find things that you like and you want to share, like I said, that's great. Me, as I said before, I also personally, along with the authenticity, I think this channel has to be about being in the presence of now, here, not 5 years, 6 years, 10 years down the road, as per se. And that's why there's no real philosophy or anything like that. This is just for those who basically want to share their experiences and their passions in life. And that's it, in an authentic way. Means without, if you want to do makeup, if you want to do edits, if you want to do things your way, that's great. And I kind of think there's not only room, but I think there is a longing for that kind of content. I think there's a longing for that kind of community. And so when it comes to, when I say about community and building the VoyMonk channel and eventually growing, I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know what all the venues or possibilities in terms of what that might seem to be. But I can always tell you that there'll never be any movement or progression that'll ever happen that won't be about the essence of what I've said, and I'll continue this until the last until I can't, right? And that is that this has to be about authenticity, about people coming here, and like I said, regardless to whether it's real, and I'll emphasize what I mean by realism as that. How do I put it? Everything and anything. I mean, VoyMonk is obviously not my name, right? But it's the name that I use, right? As far as who I am, my name, where I live, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not hiding those things, but that's not particularly what this channel is about. That doesn't mean that anything that I say about things that, this channel is for is not authentic or how I really feel. And so those are the two, those are the main differences between the realism and the authenticity. And when I was mentioning as far as 80s and 90s pop culture, that's the way that I look at it. As far as the realism, well, wrestling, is it real or is it authentic? I think it's authentic in the fact that, yeah, they're real men, real women who produce a program which is about engaging a storyline through action, through physical displays of and demonstrations of skill and athleticism. However, as far as it being real, well, I don't think that when Undertaker threw Mankind off of the cell cage, that he was trying to kill him. I don't think that was happening. I don't think that they're really trying to injure each other permanently or steal each other's managers or wives or anything like that. I just kidnapping each other's wives. There's been a lot of different storylines that have gone on in wrestling. My just overall point is that whether they're real or not, I don't think takes away from the authenticity of the story that they're telling, which is the idea that what if this happened? Or, what if, what about, this scenario that you can either participate in by watching and going on the journey, or maybe you flip the station and go to another channel or watch something else. So like I said, when it came to 80s and 90s content, that's more of what I'm talking about. As far as the realism, it was very far from real. I think there are some things that are very, really, really real, or I think there are things that can be very real, but I think they can also be very not authentic. Jerry Springer is a very, very good example of that. I think it was very real, and I think it was in a lot of ways more real than many of the content that existed during the time, at least at first. But was it authentic? No, not really. I mean, I think if you've ever watched the Jerry Springer show, one of the shticks, one of the things that he would do is at the end of the program, he'd always give a final thought and that kind of thing. And honestly, I always thought that was the better part of Jerry Springer, is that he would always have some very thoughtful comments about a lot of the nonsense that would go on for 41 or 42 minutes or whatever, with, plus commercials. But, like I said, would I say it was authentic? No, not really, because you could tell a story, and I don't know if you would necessarily consider him telling a story. I think in some ways through subtle manipulations, through the producers and the programming and production, that's kind of the way that it went. But and of course there's always questions whether or not they were ever paid and all that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't think that it's ultimately important. I think what is important is maybe what people get from it. And like I said, I'm not going to go into any serious depths of that, but the example that I give in terms of something that I think is real, but at the same time not very authentic, that would be it. Here, I want to be as real as possible, obviously, but I also want it to be, more importantly, it's authentic. It's just me, not having a general a talking to, or a moral of the story. I think Seinfeld is a great example, one of my favorite comedies. Very real. I mean, realistic in terms of many of the things that they would highlight as far as in terms of telling a story. But I think one of the great things that was about is it was real, and more importantly, I think it was authentic in terms of that was the perspective of a man called Jerry Seinfeld. But there was no moral. There was no reason to entertain it other than for laughs and to be entertained, and to see the humor that is from this perspective of a man who spent an entire career using observational comedy to highlight some of the everyday, mundane, so oftentimes exaggerated characters that were part of the show. And so, like I said, this isn't a parallel to this either. Like I said, this isn't a show. I sometimes have hesitated to know exactly what I would call this. I mean, I guess it could be kind of a show in the, in a broad sense, or maybe even a specific sense, for want of a better word. But I don't look at this as something that I'm putting on. I'm doing this because I enjoy talking about my passions, which are 80s and 90s pop culture. I also enjoy talking about life and, current events and reviews of different things that are going on now as far as movies and television shows, and just talking about life in general, and not having a moral at the end of all that. And if there's a story to be told, and I certainly think that there can be, it isn't about me telling or giving advice or putting anyone in any position where they should feel as though this is what I did, so this is what you should do too, or in any context like that. More importantly, I think overall, and this is what I really wanted to touch on as far as with this, and I've definitely covered this in my voiceovers this week, is that, being present, being in the moment, and not rushing through. Because if there's anything to be learned, at least from myself and only myself, is that, and the reason why, like I said, being in the moment is important, is that I lived through the 80s and 90s. I'm 46 years old. And so each and every single drop of juice and passion and love and greatness and good things, hopefully, that can come from this channel and anything that's done and anything that's produced, or wherever the adventure may find me or I find it. I want to never gloss over, never want to move so fast that I'm not paying attention to everything and anything I'm doing. And most, very importantly, improving over time. And hopefully, if you're listening and wherever you pick to listen, whatever you particularly pick to listen to, you can start anywhere that you want and anything that I do. And hopefully, at the very least, it'll make you go, I want to continue to listen and see what happens next. Or maybe you go, I think I'd like to go back a little bit further and see just where this guy's coming from and who he is and, what he's put forth. And I encourage that. And that's a part of that authenticity. That's a part of that journey. And part of that journey is being present, being authentic, being who I am, and, flubs and all, warts and all. And like I said, being presence of mind is an important detail. And, there may be times that I get away from that. I'm doing these and, they're erratic and I babble and I do a lot of things, but understand the ugly that is happening, that may be happening here. And like I said, I'm not trying to teach or having you learn anything, but honestly, I do believe that if there's anything that can ever be learned in life, and I think there's always things that we can all take from something, is that if you find this, if you wonder where things can go, or where maybe you can go, or maybe you have inspiration or ideas, I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. I do believe that the most, at least, and I'm learning this, and I think I'm finding this, I hope, that as I do things, as I engage, as I do the things my way, the way that I want, but also the way that I feel the way things should be done, that I'm improving, and I am getting better at this, and who knows where this goes. But if the stars, if the sky is the limit on this, then, we will know that foundation. I'll know that foundation. You may know that foundation if you've got your own journey and a way that you want to do things. And so, yeah, if I end this with anything, it's to be presence of mind. And that's very important. It's very vital to being authentic. It's very important to this channel. And it's very important to the things that I do or even don't do. The mess that will be this channel from now until time to come. And, hopefully as things improve, as things work their way out, that's the thing that you'll find on this VoyMonk channel. So, that's Friday's vlog. And this has gone quite a bit longer than... like I said, usually on the Friday vlog, I'm going to go 5, 10, maybe 20, no, it's almost 25 minutes now. This week, I think I've kind of kept things a little bit closer to the 5-minute mark as I'd like to do. Although I think with doing that, sometimes the sound quality is changed a little bit. Part of doing broadcasting, from my experience and things that I've learned and doing it, is that your breathing, your pace, there's lots of little things that you can do and not do that can have an influence over on the overall way that you sound and the way that you may come across. And I know that there's some bits of manipulation to that to a degree, but for me, it's more about not necessarily being entertaining, but being acceptable. Hopefully, this is good. You can hear me, that it's pleasant to your ears enough to where you can enjoy and listen. And so, yeah. Sometimes going a little bit quicker and faster, it takes a certain kind of skill to, especially if you're going to ad lib or not go by a script or anything like that, which I don't do, and I don't edit. Yeah, it takes some practice. That's part of the in and out, and it also comes with the mistakes and errors that I've made a whole bunch since I've started, and I still do, and yeah, it's part of the process. So if you've been listening up until this point, thank you. This is the Friday vlog, and I will see you next time. Take care.